I have really begun to live the life of, if I say I'm going to do a thing, I'm going to do that thing. And if you're going to say you're going to do that thing, you better do that thing, because I don't have time for, oh yeah, that sounds great, and then no follow-ups, right? I'm 39, babies. I don't have time for that shit, right? Well, hey there, sweet peas. Welcome back to Friendless. I'm your host, James Avramenko, and it is my birthday. Or it's around my birthday. I'm not sure when this episode's coming out, but this week I am turning 39. 39 years young. And I thought I would mark the occasion with a special retrospective episode of Friendless. You know, I've been reflecting slightly on aging, getting older, you know. Mostly I've been paralyzed by the fear that all the dreams I had of accomplishing have long passed me by. I never took the shot. I didn't even realize I had the opportunity to take. And I'm going to die a broke, anonymous failure. So I've been really fun at the parties that I'm not getting invited to. But in all honesty, yeah, it's been a time of reflection, time of consideration, and I thought what I would do is I'd do a very special Q&A episode. In the Avramenko household, we like to celebrate not just a birthday, but a birth week. Sometimes if we're feeling real generous, we might celebrate a birth month. And hey, since it's 39, a very, very important year, the end of an era, if I'm feeling real spicy, I might even decide to let myself celebrate a birth year. But we'll see. We'll see. To kick all things off, I asked some friends over the last couple of weeks. I've been asking for suggestions around questions about the show, about, you know, where it's been, where it's going, what I'm about, what I've been thinking about, these kinds of things. And I have boiled them down to 39 questions to celebrate these 39 glorious years on Earth that I've had. I don't know if I'll hit them all. We'll see how it all goes. But I have a potential to hit 39 plus questions. But we'll see how I'm feeling. But yeah, let's get to it. So the first question is, what was Friendless supposed to be when you started? And this is a story I've told in various forms throughout the years, but I'll always take the opportunity to talk about myself and the history of the show and what it's kind of evolved into. You know, originally it was kind of a joke, right? The initial impulse and the initial kind of gimmick of the show was I just really wanted to start a podcast. And at the time, most podcasts were interview shows, unless it was Serial, but I wasn't going to be doing that. So I had no way of getting popular, famous guests. So instead, I decided to figure out a way to interview my friends. At the same time, too, this was in the era, you know, this is 7-8 years ago. This is the era when people were still making like big, dramatic, declarative statements that they were leaving Facebook and sayonara world. If you want me, I'll be out in the real world, you know. And then, of course, inevitably, they would be back on the platform a week later, because we are all victims of these addictive, weaponized social media tools. And I hate social media with a burning passion. I'm deeply addicted to it. And as with most things that I do with my day, I loathe it. And so I came up with this idea of, what if I kind of married those different things together? You know, a way to interview my friends, a way to somehow get off of Facebook. And so I would interview people from my Facebook, and we would discuss friendship and our friendship and what it means to be a friend and all those kinds of things. Then end of the interview, we would unfriend, hence the initial naming of the show, Friendless. What I realized over the years, though, is that this was a deeper exploration than just that kind of gimmick. It was more of a show about feeling lonely, whether or not you actually are or aren't. I had someone once describe me as the loneliest person they had ever met. And to this day, I can't decide if that was a very loving or mean-spirited observation. But with the mental health journey I've been on over the years, there have been times where I've considered myself a very bad friend. There have been times where I've considered everyone else in the world a bad friend, right? And so the show itself has become more of an exploration of why do we feel lonely and what are some ways we can kind of work our way through those feelings and parse out what's real and what's not. And from there, how can we build out a support system and a community in order to not let those louder moments of loneliness slip in? Which leads into the next question. Which episode would you delete? Honestly, I have deleted many. If you look in the back catalog, you can't find the first, 2 or 3 seasons of the show. And that's on purpose. If anything, for a variety of reasons, a lot of low quality stuff. I was still figuring out how to record. I was using some pretty shoddy equipment. Also, just some of the guests I didn't want commemorated on my feed anymore. So yeah, already have and would do again if need be. Currently, as far as I remember, everything that is still up on the feed right now are things that I would like to stay up on the feed. Next, which guest have you thought about the most since they left? And that is a very targeted question. One of the things that I have become eternally grateful in doing this show over the years is realizing what a gift I have created for myself and what a gift I have been trying to give to all of my guests. Because, I don't enjoy small talk all that much. I really like to go. And, and this isn't like, oh, small talk bores me, small talk for small minds. Like, no, like small talk has its place. It's just that I personally struggle with it. I find myself feeling very awkward, feeling very out of place, uncertain if I'm saying the right thing or, so I like to kind of let my brain go where it goes. And it just so happens that my brain can make some pretty fun and interesting connections and big leaps. And that creates an opportunity to discuss certain topics that I think a lot of us think about, a lot of us have perspectives and opinions and experiences with, but we're not always given the opportunity to discuss them. It's hard for me to point out like this one single guest or this one single episode or anything like that, so much as reflect on the gratitude I have for past James and the whole wealth of guests that I've had throughout the years who have allowed for that kind of experimentation and have allowed for us to just kind of play for an hour. Something I've always kind of seen it as is this idea of, especially when reconnecting with old friends, people I haven't spoken to in a long time, with my more recent guests, obviously we don't always have the history that some of my older guests had, but the way I would consider it is this idea of, a lot of the times we haven't spoken in years. And so either this hour we spend together will be this beautiful kind of rekindling and a reminder of what we love about each other. And I've had that experience several times. I think about someone like Kira Daniels, who I hadn't spoken to in years. And then she came on my show. And ever since then, we've been absolute besties. Talk all the time, see each other as often as we can. It's because of this show that I rekindled a very deep and meaningful friendship in my life. At the same time, too, there's been lots of guests where, with no malice, with no ill intention, we're going to basically have one last hour in our lives. And it's going to be a fucking great hour. And that's kind of the gift that this show has been giving out, is the idea of either it's going to rekindle a friendship or it's going to make sure the last hour we spend together is fucking awesome. And gentle and exploratory and curious and fun and funny and all those great things. All the things I think we kind of wish we could guarantee in life, that we get the opportunity to say the things we wish we had said. So yeah, I'm hesitant to say like one guest out. Have I thought about specific guests? Absolutely. I've thought about Tort Campbell, the lead singer of one of my favorite bands, probably my favorite band of all time, Stars, and how he called me his friend on the episode. Of course, then, I went to see his show and he didn't remember me at all. And that's fine. That's fine. No, he didn't big time me. I totally get it. But, haven't thought about certain guests, I've thought about people like Dean Spade, Jessica Fern, these authors who have like fundamentally altered the way I show up in my life, the way I show up in my relationships. A very recent episode, Elder Larry Grant, what a magic hour that was to meet him and to speak with him. So yeah, it's one of those things where I try really hard not to like pick favorites because it's not really about that. And my ADHD brain is so often it's like the most recent thing is like, well, that was the best episode I've ever done. Oh wait, no, that was the best episode I've ever done. Like my interview with Leandra just last week, I was like, that's the best interview I've ever had, right? Like it's definitely my brain is wired for recency bias. So yeah, it's tough to pick kind of like the one. What do you actually get out of making this? And that's, I think I've already scratched on that, is this idea of, I've realized throughout the years, someone described the show as me doing freelance sociology. And I really love that description. And that's really stuck with me. But it's also become deeper. It's become a way for me to discover myself. It's become a way for me to discover facets of the people in my life I probably never would have had the chance to observe or experience. It's allowed me to hear stories from people who I love that I might not have ever had the chance to hear. For me, what I get out of it is, in a lot of ways, something new every time, because it's an opportunity to explore and just be curious and see what happens. And I find that when we face each other with curiosity, and I've talked in the past about this idea of the difference between kind of like empathy and sympathy. But I think when we turn to each other with empathy and we allow each other to share their experience and their perspectives without initial judgment, it opens us up, and it opens us up to potential deeper connections. Obviously, that comes with a lot of nuance, but I think that that's a philosophy that I've developed throughout the years on doing this show that keeps getting practiced because of it. Has the show ever made you a worse friend? Probably. I think a lot of the time, as with most social media, as with most kind of creative outlets like this, I think there is a level of parasocial interaction. I think that there is, from my perspective, there has been a lot of assumption that people know what's going on in my life because I've talked about it on the show. The thing is that, like, most of my friends aren't listening to the show, and I get it, right? Like they get enough of me when we hang out, but like, has it made me a worse friend? Yeah. I have to assume, because I've told stories on here that I thought, well, now that I've told it there, everybody will know about it. I think that's created a lot of assumptions. The past 4 years have been pretty up and down for me, right? There's been a lot of chaos, and I've made a lot of chaotic choices, and I have lived a lot of those chaotic choices in public. I have been very confident about where I was in life, only to have it be revealed that I was somewhere very different. I don't know if I would personally frame it as better or worse. I think it has made me a much more interesting friend. But it has also, at the same time, maybe from an outside perspective, it could be seen as worse, because it has made me a much more aggressively choosy friend. I don't suffer halfway friends. I have really begun to live the life of, if I say I'm going to do a thing, I'm going to do that thing. And if you're going to say you're going to do that thing, you better do that thing, because I don't have time for, oh yeah, that sounds great, and then no follow-ups, right? I'm 39, babies. I don't have time for that shit, right? And so I think it's made me a much more discerning friend. And I think from the outside, that can maybe make me look like a bit of a dickhead. That can probably make me look a little bit rigid at times. But it's just, I don't have time for excuses of capacity, right? What's the question you ask everyone that you are sick of asking? What does it mean to be a friend? I think I'm right now. I'm trying to find new directions to go in conversations and in interviews, and I think where the show has been in questioning friendship has grown and morphed into more questions of community and connection. The problem with that is that that's like the number one topic in podcasts these days. So it's become much harder to stand out without the gimmick of the unfriending stuff. Um, so I don't know if I would say I'm sick of asking the question, but I would definitely say I'm not asking the most effective questions to stand out in the crowd. Even though I know I'm putting out some good shit, there's very low discoverability in podcasting. So I think it's more, I'm trying to find the more effective question. If Friendless ended next Tuesday, would part of you be relieved? 100%. I don't think people realize how much work goes into a single episode between the sketching and the mapping and the planning. If it's an interview, it's maybe reading somebody's book, maybe it's researching them, then it's drafting the questions, then it's the recording, then it's editing, then it's the promotion, and on and on and on. So would I be relieved? Absolutely. I would also be so fucking sad. When I go on hiatuses, when I go on breaks, I get sadder without this show. So like, yeah, would it free up some time in my day? Sure. But I think that relief would be very short-lived. Let's see. Who's the last new friend you made and how did it happen? Funny enough, I think it's actually the most recent guest, Leandra Guillet. There's kind of a few people in her kind of crew that I have met through Boom Pro Wrestling, the greatest pro wrestling show on earth, live at the Legion in Vancouver every last Saturday of the month. Best show in the world. But I've met a crew of people who go there and then kind of their extended friends. And I've just been kind of like over the last like year or two, been slowly trying to like creep my way closer, and like every show I'm like a little more like, hi, maybe we could hang out sometime. Oh, hey, maybe if I set up a thing, maybe would you want to come to it? And then, like I've been like, would you like to come to my birthday party? And so it's just, it's that I've been playing the long game, that's one thing, talk about lessons I've learned about being a friend. One thing I have learned from doing this show is that you cannot force a friendship. I remember a couple years ago, I was like, God, I'm so jealous of these people who have these like 10-year friends. And it's like, yeah, because they spent 10 years becoming friends. They didn't just show up and know each other, right? And so I've had to really pump the brakes and just like allow things to really, really naturally progress. And it's been great. Let's see, where are we at? Who do you miss that you feel you're not entitled to miss? God damn, whoever fucking asked that. Fuck you. I think you are entitled to miss anyone you want. I think the question comes in more about why do you miss them and what should you do about that? I think often about former friends. I think about exes, and people who realistically, pragmatically speaking, I'm very glad aren't in my life. And that's with no malice. And that's no, like, it's a good thing that they're not in my life. And it's a good thing that I'm not in their life, right? This is why people break up, because they are not a good match, right? But you still have moments of tenderness. You still have moments of like, oh yeah, but there were good stuff. It's remembering the balance. Because sometimes you are remembering the good stuff because you're in an abuse cycle. And then sometimes you're remembering the good stuff because, there was good stuff. And it's okay with a distance to remember that and celebrate that and still not call them. Right? I'm not going to talk about ending friendships. Sorry. What is the longest you have gone without saying anything true out loud? Fuck. Oh, God. I think I try. When I was a kid, I was a compulsive liar about really like dumb shit. Stuff I didn't need to lie about. But for some reason, when I remember just like as a little kid, just like lying about stuff, just because like it just kind of, it was almost like it was like a novelty. It was like I kind of could. I know it's connected to ADHD stuff. I know it's connected to BPD stuff. I don't really know or care because I also got that kind of shamed out of me all the way up through like probably high school, even into like early university. I was a pretty compulsive liar, and funny enough, I'm working on a novel right now, and a piece that inspired the novel and the story I'm writing was someone in university basically saying, everybody knows you are lying, but nobody cares enough to call you out. And I remember just being so like, you know? And from there, I realized that it's just so much. It not only is it easier, it's just easier to tell the truth. It's also it's more interesting. And I think that throughout the years, especially I would say in the last, last 6 years, it's been one of the things that has been the most troubling. And also one of the things that's been the most kind of activating for me is that the things that have happened haven't needed to be lied about. They've been crazy enough, it just as they were. And so it's really important to me to do my best to speak as honestly and truly as I can. So how long has it been, or how long have I gone? Years when I was a kid, but basically since university, I've done everything in my power to not lie, and I've done everything in my power to tell the truth. And when it's shown to me that my perspective is off or whatever, to do everything I can to adjust and make amends for that, because it's just such an intrinsic element of my values. Is loneliness a problem to solve, or is it a weather system? I love whoever the fuck came up with that. It's kind of both, depending on how you perceive it. Because, they used to say that like moods and mental health and stuff is like about sort of like chemical imbalances. They know that that's wrong. It's basically fancy words for, the humors. But I think I do equate these sort of states, loneliness, depression, but also the other, kind of hyper and hypo states, manias. These are all kind of weather systems in my brain, at least, and just like weather systems, they shift and they come around, and you get El Nino and it's suddenly real loud in your brain, and you do sometimes just kind of have to ride it out. At the same time, the other side of it is that if I've learned anything through, DBT and my other kind of therapy, is that like it's a very, very nuanced thing, and it's hard to kind of tamp down into specifics. But it's this idea of like our moods and our feelings are both products of our experiences and also kind of products of what we choose to experience. I'm not like some fucking stoic who's like, oh, we decide how we see the world, and it's like, thanks Marcus Aurelius, the king of Rome, but like it's more about like is this idea of like sometimes you decide to take your hands off the wheel because it's really fucking hard to always be steering. The problem is when you take your hands off the wheel, you lose control. And so, you decide to be a little bit of a dick, but what comes out is a chaos goblet, right? So this idea of like, is it a problem to be solved? Like, yes, but I think it's less about treating it like a problem. I think if anything, it's the wording is that like, loneliness is not in itself a problem. It's why are you feeling it? And is it loneliness or is it isolation? Do you need to be alone right now? Is that loneliness good? Is it bad? Who's perceiving the problem? I guess I'm getting pedantic about the language. I think I'd be cautious around framing any emotion as a problem so much as, what's causing the clouds and why. Does that make any sense? I don't know. Let's see. What did you think 39 would look like back at 29? Honestly, dead. I I had no intention of making it to 40. I didn't think I would, especially when I was in my 20s. Oh my God. I was convinced I needed to leave a very beautiful corpse. But every year that has passed, and it's with every bridge that has burned in my wake, my desire to live out of pure spite and out of revenge has grown. But no, what did I think 39 was going to be? I don't know. I think, truthfully, I have a hard time talking about what I thought my life was going to be when I was 29 because, I got married at 29 and I thought that I was going to have a very different life. And I thought I was marrying someone who it turns out I didn't know at all. The story I was being told was not the story that was being lived. And I was so trapped in the lie that was kind of built around me that I didn't see it, And it's funny, in retrospect, I've spent a lot of time at therapy being like, how did I not see it? How did I not know? How did I not question it? And my therapist always kind of has to laugh like, well, yeah, what were you thinking trusting the person who you left? Right? How dare you believe the person who you married, right? So, I have spent a long time in therapy beating myself up, and then an even longer time in therapy being forgiving to myself. So yeah, but at the same time too, it's still, what did I think 39 was going to be when I was 29? Fucking hell. Sure as shit, not where I am. How about that? What did you give up on? And was that grief or maturity? What did I give up on? Fuck, some of these questions are really hard. Jesus Christ. My 30s taught me that I'm not special. My 20s were like, I'm a superstar and I'm so important. And my 30s were basically just being consistently knocked down and put in my place and just failing for 10 years. Between the divorce, between some really, really shitty relationships, between some rekindling of addictions and then some quashing of those, and between just, just endless failures creatively. What I gave up on was this idea that I was special or destined for anything. And instead, I've just really settled into just being really content with just making what I make. And if it reaches one person, I'm satisfied because I'm happy with what I put out. Was that grief or maturity? I don't know. I just think I just kind of gave up on the pursuit of exceptionalism. And I've become really comfortable with just being kind of good enough, Let's see. Which version of yourself from this decade would you least want to be stuck in a car with? Oh, easy peasy. James from mid 2022 to end of 2023. That, year and a half. Between being freshly divorced and then jumping into the worst relationship of my life that wasn't my marriage, just back to back. That was my, I slipped into some pretty bad drug use and alcohol abuse and was just not in a good brain. And I woke up from that, and I would, I have to thank anyone who knew me in that phase who continues to speak to me, because I sure didn't enjoy that year. And yeah, anyway, What did you do in your 30s that nobody knows about? Very little, I think. I think most of what I did, people are pretty aware of. Whether it's the real facts or not is anybody's guess. But yeah, I don't think that there's very much that either I kept hidden or someone from my life kept hidden. All right, here's some quickies, and then we're gonna get into the more silly ones. Best meal of the decade. There is a vegan sushi place just off of Granville Island. It's unbelievable. It was literally the best just meal I have had. I had been vegan for a couple months up at that point, and it had I had eaten good stuff. It's what had convinced me to go vegan. But then I went to this place. It's called Kofu sushi, and it was unbelievable. It was the best sushi I've ever eaten, and it was all vegan. And the best part, it was all the cocktails were non-alcoholic, so it was literally a little restaurant built for me, a sober vegan. It was magic. Kofu, go check it out. Best haircut, worst haircut. Best haircut. Recently, I have started going to my guy Daniel at what is it called? At Belmont Barbers on Main Street. Daniel, Belmont Barbers. Check him out. He's the best. I have a funny story. So last year was the first time I went to him. I had been going to this other barber on Main Street. They were like a walk-in, but they kind of suck. I won't throw too much shade because, it's a small business, but like, the owner's just kind of a D-bag. So I couldn't get in there, so I ran around the corner. I went into Belmont, and they took walk-ins, and I was chatting with Daniel. He was cutting my hair. It was around Pride. We were talking about stuff we were going to do for Pride, and it was just so relieving to have a queer barber and to not have to kind of butch up a little bit, which is what I used to have to do. And we were talking, and we were just having such a great time. And then he gave me such a good haircut. And then I'm paying. And something about, I don't know if it was like he made like a little gesture with his shoulders or something, but my autistic brain took it as like, oh, he's going in for a hug. And I was so excited and so happy that I gave him a big old hug. And then he kind of did this like, oh, okay. And in my head, I went, oh, fuck. I totally misread that. Oh, no. And I was mortified. I run out just like so embarrassed. And I don't go back for a year. Even though it was the best haircut I had gotten in my entire time living in Vancouver. But I was just mortified. I was so embarrassed until finally, maybe a month ago, I was like, okay, fuck, I need a haircut. I need to go somewhere good. I'm going back to Daniel. And he remembered me. And I was like, yeah, I was the guy who hugged you. And he was like, yeah, I wondered where you went. You were so lovely. And he was so nice. He was so kind. And I was like, I was mortified. And he's like, no, it was great, And now I've been back twice, and he hugs me every time. And it's fucking great. So, yeah, Daniel at the Belmont. Shout out. Best haircut. Worst haircut is, I remember one time in Saskatoon going to I just needed a really quick haircut. And I went to like one of those like ultra cuts or like mega cuts or whatever. I swear, like, it would have been better if she had put the bowl on my head and just cut around it, Like, it was one of those just like, oh, boys. It was just so square and flat. I had to go get it fixed at a different place the next day because it was horrible. But yeah. Let's see. The song that owns a specific gear that can't be played casually. I would say maybe not necessarily a song, but an album. Chance the Rapper, Coloring Book, I cannot play. That was just too important an album when it came out and just what was happening in my life at the time versus now. Can't do it. Cannot listen to Anthems for a 17-year-old Girl by Broken Social Scene. Again, I can't. Yeah, where it brings me back to is just like, it's too important to lose. And I remember once reading somewhere years ago that said that when you listen to music, it's one of the best sort of triggers for memories. But what happens is you don't end up remembering the memory. You remember the last time you remembered the song or something like that. It's this weird, it creates this kind of diluting effect. And so it's become very hard for me to go back to important music from my past because I'm worried that it's going to kind of like lose its luster, lose its magic, right? So yeah, Anthems from book and social scene. I mean, realistically, all of Set Yourself on Fire by Stars is difficult to go back to again, just because of the time. But yeah. First impulse though, coloring book, especially same drugs. Like, oof, can't do it. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Let's get some of the more fun ones. What was the weirdest birthday that has now become a regular dinner story? Um, so, okay, I think it was my 21st. I think it was my 21st birthday. I got hammered blind drunk in Victoria, went to a new club I'd never been to before. And we got in, bought a round, and then I got talking to this girl who, just was at the bar. And she wanted to buy me around because it was my birthday. But the bartender didn't accept credit cards. So she was like, oh, okay, cool. We'll go next door and I'll get you a shot at the strip club. And I was like, cool, great. I was already blackout drunk. It took us, I think, 2 hours to get from the bar to the strip club next door because we went outside and drunk ass me, basically like proto podcaster, I talked to everyone and I was chain smoking and I was having a great time. I was talking to like a street artist guy. I was talking to the bouncer. I was having this great time. We finally get into the strip club, right, literally the next door, and she disappears. I think she had to go to the bathroom or something. She bought the shots, but so I'm sitting alone at the strip club and I suddenly just got like so depressed. Just like watching all these like middle-aged businessmen leering these young women. And I just felt just like so gross. And so I took the shots and I went outside and I didn't realize it had been like 4 hours because all of my friends who I'd come to the bar with were all getting into a cab going home. And they were like, we didn't know where you were. We thought you had already left. We haven't seen you for hours. So I hop in the cab, go back to a friend's place, and everybody, they're all, it's all couples. They're all going to hook up with each other, and I'm alone on the couch. And I don't know how, but I ended up in the hot tub that wasn't turned on. So I was sitting in my clothes in a not turned on hot tub. And I was convinced I was going to drown because it was cold. And I was like so fucking drunk and my body temperature's all fucked up. But I was just sitting there being like, oh no, I'm in danger. Because I was like, I'm going to pass out and I'm going to drink. So I had to like roll myself out of the hot tub and onto the couch, leaving what can only be, I have to imagine, a massive wet spot on the couch. And then waking up before everyone else and going home before I had to kind of face the shame. But yeah, I think that's probably one of the more ridiculous birthdays that I now kind of tell with a little bit of just like, Has Friendless gone the path that you imagined? Not even a little bit. I thought it was going to be a very closed circuit. I would finish with Facebook and then I would be done. But, as I was saying at the top, I'm so much prouder of where it has gone, and I'm so much more excited about the experimental nature of this show. I do go back and forth sometimes around like, do I just close it out? Do I rebrand? Do I rename it? What do I do? And I've realized no, because Friendless is, as I was saying, it's about this exploration of loneliness and this exploration of connection, and it's kind of, me. It's this exploration of me. I think one time I described it as like, there's sort of like this American life and it's sort of like this Jimmy's life, because it's like every guest is like a facet of me, and where it's gone is so much more interesting and so much more exciting. So and with these, with my collaboration with Book Warehouse and things that are coming down the pipeline with that, there's some really exciting things that have been happening that I wouldn't have had access to. I've been hosting these panels on Main Street all month because of this show. And so yeah, it's not remotely what I thought it was going to be, but it's better. Yeah. Can we overcome incompatible zodiac signs in our friendships? Absolutely we can, because zodiac signs aren't real. I'm really sorry. I'm really, really sorry. I love them. But my opinion, ironically, my opinion on Zodiac is because I'm a Virgo. So can they be overcome? Absolutely. Unless they're a Scorpio, in which case you're in trouble. Can they be overcome? Yes. You just have to believe. And you just have to like the person enough. You have to like the person, not the sign, right? Zodiac, like tarot, like so many of these horoscopy things, they're really helpful tools. Don't treat them as dogma because they're not supposed to be. They're just supposed to be guideposts. And so, treat them for the arcane, mystery that it conjures. Don't treat them as prescriptive fact. I think when we get too deep in the literalism of these things, we lose the magic, which is what they're actually supposed to be about. Oh, this is a question when this question came in, I immediately was like, oh, I can't wait. This is such a left turn, but I could not wait to answer this question. I'm about to start a new job as a college mascot. Do you have any advice for this style of live performance or any stories to share? And when I tell you, I have been sitting on my high school mascot experiences since high school, and I have never had the chance to tell this story. So do I have advice? Yes. And it comes from personal, actual experience. I got to be Tommy the Trojan at my school pep rallies a couple times. And the first thing I will recommend is slow down. You think you have to do so much and you don't. The costume does everything. It's like pro wrestling. Just doing one thing is enough. I got so hyped up and I was so like, I got the costume on and I started doing laps. I started running back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And within, a couple minutes, I was completely gassed. I was dead. I was so sweaty. And the jocks, the football team, they were like, buddy, whoever's in there, like, slow down, bro. They were like worried about me, So yeah, first piece of advice, slow down. Let the costume do the acting. But yeah, so I got in, did my thing, did the pep rally. My other piece of advice is, if possible, have a spotter, because for some reason, at least in high school, I don't know if this is going to be the same in college or university or whatever. In high school, people love tackling the mascot. And I got full on Bill Goldberg speared. Like if any of you are familiar with the wrestler Rhino and how he didn't do the spear, he did the gore, because that's how intense his spear was. I got gored to the point where, like, it decapitated me. Like, Tommy's head went flying. I saw God. and no one was there, and I'm not trying to, this isn't me being like, woe is me. Like, they took me out. And so if you can, have a spotter to protect you. But yeah, I think that's so exciting. I think you're going to have an absolute blast. Mascots rule. Being a mascot rules. I feel like mascots and like Disney characters, like at Disneyland and stuff, are kind of in the same boat where it's like they're magic. They're magic, and like don't pretend they're not. Just like try to have a bodyguard or like a spotter to kind of try and be a little bit of a buffer. But otherwise, just enjoy it. I'm really jealous. I think you're going to have an absolute blast. Report back with any stories that you have. Where's your heart as you enter your 39th year? That is such a kind-hearted question, and I really appreciate it. And where is my heart? My heart is doing pretty good, all things considered. I'm almost 3 years sober. I am deeply in love. I am eating better than ever. I have taken up running. I run 3 days a week, and on my off days, I dead hang and do yoga. I'm feeling great. I'm really excited. I have a personal goal of my own that I'm forcing myself to get a book published before I turn 40. It's just a personal goal of mine. I have been threatening for too long to publish my work. I've been sending out my poetry, getting a few rejections, and that's fine. I'm working on a novel that I'm hoping to have like a rough draft done pretty quick and to be able to kind of get some beta readers going so that I could have it submitted to publishers before, honestly, I can probably do it before the end of the year and then hopefully have it kind of, it may not be in like, whatchamacallit, it may not be in physical form before I turn 40, but it'll be kind of in the pipeline. You know what I mean? But yeah, where's my heart? Really excited. I believe in the privilege of aging. I'm excited to get older. I love my grays. I love getting my wrinkles. I think you earn your wrinkles, and I'm really excited. I in a lot of ways I feel kind of bad for people. Like this sounds so up my own ass, but like I feel bad about things like Botox and these kinds of things. I get self-conscious. Don't get me wrong. I think about getting chemical peels. I think about getting facial stuff all the time, but I don't do it because I've realized that like those wrinkles are my story, and there are people that I know who won't ever get a 39th birthday. There are people who didn't make it to their 30th birthday. Aging is such a privilege. And as my therapist loves to remind me, I often talk about like, oh yeah, that third act comeback. And he's like, well, that's if you get it. Like, you're not guaranteed shit. So I think getting over the idea that we're owed old age and that we'll all die old and peaceful and in bed is a fantasy, right? So where's my heart? Excited, trying to make up for some of that exercise that I didn't do in my 30s, and just grateful to be where I am and have the opportunity to do what I'm doing. Yeah. Song of the moment. Yeah, so if you've been reading my weekly Substack, you know that I've been recommending a song every week, but right now, two songs that have been crazy stuck in my head. The Obvious Child by Paul Simon. I have woken up every morning for like 2 weeks with that song stuck in my head. Those goddamn drums. Anyway, yeah. Love that song. And then the other one is Angst in My Pants. Very, very me-coded song. Angst in My Pants by Sparks has very quickly become a heavy rotation ADHD fixation listen. So yeah, that's those are the songs of the moment. Every year as the clock strikes midnight from August 23rd to 24th, I will often, almost every year for the as rememberable past, I've put on Time to Dance by The Shoes. It's probably one of my favorite all-time songs. So because it's my birthday, technically the song of the moment is Time to Dance by The Shoes, which has a completely deranged music video of Jake Gyllenhaal in Paris kind of being like a techno American Psycho. He works out and murders people. It's fucking great. Yeah, check it out. I'll probably put it in the newsletter. So look for the link there. Let's see. Wow, I'm already at well beyond an hour, so I'm going to try and wrap this up. Let's do two more. What goes into the making of an episode of Friendless? What is your production process from start to finish? And how do you know an episode is ready to spread its wings and leave the nest? I love this question. And actually, I'm going to answer this question in a different form at a different time. But the short answer right now is what goes into it and how do I know it's time to publish? Because I have to put something out. But no, what goes into it? It depends on the guest. If it's an author, I have to read their book. I have to research them. I have to sketch out interview questions. I then have to, book them, record them. Then you have to edit. You have to, because I've been recording live at a store that is still open at the time, I often have to edit around other customers, things like that. You're then, publishing from there. I'll go back, I'll listen, I'll cut stuff, I'll try and chop stuff out. I'll try to clean up as many ums and and you know what I means as possible, but that's just kind of how I talk. I've been a little bit easier on myself lately in terms of doing more every other week, but when I'm really in my groove, it's just that it's Monday night and I need something in the queue for Tuesday morning, right? But that being said, that question, I think I'd like to answer a little bit more in depth somewhere else. So I'm going to use that as a little bit of a springboard, and I'm going to look at other ways that I can kind of show how I actually, plan and record and then execute an episode. Because if that's something that's interesting to people, I would love to share it. Last question. Has doing Friendless help you make friends? I think, as I said earlier, it's helped me figure out what I want in a friend. So I don't know if it has helped me make new friends, but it has helped me maintain the friends that I want. It has also allowed me to refine and practice skills that are kind of just natural to me. I'm a very naturally curious, personable, friendly person. I like to learn about people. I like to hear their stories. I like to, understand. I like to understand people because I don't understand people, and I don't understand why people do what they do, and I want to know why, right? Someone once said, I was having after my autism diagnosis, I was having one of those kind of moments of doubt where I was like, well, can I even really be I literally had a diagnosis, and I was like, yeah, but am I? Because it's not like I'm really into trains or something, even though as I said that, I was like, even though actually I'm really into trains. I'd really like to know more about trains. I just don't have the time. But what they said was, no, the thing is that your special interest is learning. And I realized that that's really true. I just love learning stuff. So I don't always have a very specific hyper focus. I just like learning stuff. And so that has led me to be very curious about people. Has it helped me make friends? Maybe. I'm still not very consistent. I'm still very forgetful. I still am really bad at replying to texts. I still am really bad at planning. I want to be the one who takes the onus, but I fall short a lot. And so it leaves me feeling very lonely and isolated and forgotten. I often feel like, in my darker moments, I feel like, yeah, it's I'm easy to have around, but I'm easy to forget about, right? And I don't think any of that's malicious. I think that's just my mental illness lying to me, right? But yeah, I think the show has helped me practice the skills that it would take to make a friend. Have I applied them in the most effective ways possible every time? Absolutely not. But that's not what being a human is about, right? It's about giving it a shot, seeing what works, and adjusting accordingly. How's that for an answer, huh? But that's going to be it. I am so grateful that you listened straight through to the end of the episode, and I hope this was fun and illuminating and educating and all the other things that you could possibly need here at the dawn of James Avramenko's 39th year. Fun fact, this also is the 50th episode of what I have dubbed Season 8. So that's a fun little cosmetic crossroads. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. If you'd like more Friendless, if you didn't get enough here, be sure to sign up for my weekly Substack. I've been writing it starts with a little intro piece, kind of an experimental, what I'm feeling that week. Sometimes it's a list, sometimes it's a little essay, sometimes it's a 1-minute play. It's all kinds of fun stuff. Then there is recommendations for a book to read, a fun video to watch, and a song to listen to. It's a ton of fun. It's an easy read. It's free. So be sure to sign up for that. But other than that, I'm just going to leave things here. Thank you so much for listening. I hope I'll catch you at the next episode. But hey, as always, I'm not going to worry about that now, and neither should you, because that is then, and this is now. So for now, I'll just say I love you, and I wish you well. Fun and safety, sweet peas.